Let's have a conversation about coworkers who always want a hug from you. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed therapist. This commenter says, thank you for all you do. What is your professional opinion on coworkers automatically reaching for hugs every day without fail? I don't recommend it. I don't recommend This is just me. I don't recommend hugging in physical contact in the workplace in general. I've seen too many instances where people misconstrue that. It's a very slippery slope where, but with that and harassment and just inappropriateness, that can be a very slippery slope. And it may start out as something that is benign, but you never know what someone's going through, what people have been through, if people have been traumatized, if people have been assaulted or abused or things like that. As a general rule of thumb, I don't recommend touching, even in therapy, and I know there's probably a ton of therapists that disagree, but I think it's actually a sign of poor boundaries of always hugging clients and things like that. I think that's a very slippery slope, and it's not something that I would ever recommend doing. And I used to have a colleague like this, a male colleague, and we worked in a psych unit together. And every time he would hug everybody. And I told him, I would say, you might want to stop doing that. I mean, that's not going to, and not in a nasty way, but just, that can go badly, where people misinterpret that, or people start feeling funny or offended by it, or they don't like it and they just want it to stop. But now they feel obligated to have to touch you. And so I recommend if you're on the receiving end, I recommend, having a conversation and saying, hey, I respect you as my colleague, but I'd rather if we keep things in a place where they're platonic, and I really don't want to engage in touching. And you could phrase it however you want to, but you could say, I don't want you to touch me anymore. And I would be very firm and very direct about that. And then, any further contact, I would report it, because sometimes it's not. I've seen it where it's not about necessarily being friendly, but I've seen people who have escalated what was said to be platonic hugs to other things, where things just sort of spun out of control. And you guys, I've talked quite a bit about the line of work that I've done over the years, and sometimes that extends to colleagues who also then become preoccupied in a way that is sexual and unhealthy. And sometimes you what may have started out as something that was friendly and benign and platonic, the other person may be reading, one person may be reading more into it than what it is, and now it's just turned into some big thing. And this could even be if it's same sex, same gender. But, I just don't recommend doing it. And you don't know what people are thinking or what their intentionalities are. And if people feel like they have to do that, because there are people that I have encountered in my years of working who feel like they have to do it, that is saying something more about them. And I would really encourage you to not engage physically with that person, because if people feel like they have to physically touch you, there's something else. There may be something else going on there. But I definitely don't recommend it in my field. So, anybody who's doing therapy with their clients, I would be careful. I know there's people that work with like little kids and stuff, but even still, it's a very slippery slope. Massage therapists, I don't recommend them doing it. Anything where people may feel vulnerable or may get attached or have transference or countertransference, those sorts of things, I don't recommend doing it. But, I don't know of any job where a colleague is required to hug all of their peers. As a general rule of thumb, regardless of what profession, I don't recommend it. It can get real slippery and ugly really fast. Not to mention just uncomfortable and feeling like you're obligated to touch someone when you may not necessarily want to do that. So I think that everybody deserves to be comfortable, and you can do that at the workplace without touching. Hope that helps. Thanks so much for asking this.